Hello, 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 and welcome back to That Quirky Bird Girl. I am your host, Steph, That Quirky Bird Girl, and I am here today joined by an inspiring guest, Steve Burrows, not just for his amazing writings that we'll get into throughout this podcast episode, but also, Steve, for your perspective on birds and your passion. It's truly infectious. So I am so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Steph, and thanks so much for inviting me to be part of the podcast. It's really exciting to be here. I am a birder and a writer and a whole bunch of other things, but that's kind of the main focus of my activities these days. I write murder mysteries in which the detective is a birder, so I try and integrate birding info into the stories without having them dominate the stories. So I want them to be murder mysteries that everybody's going to enjoy, hopefully, whether they're birders or not. But birding is a big part of my life. We'll talk more about that during the podcast, I'm sure. But because it's such a big part of my life, I kind of wanted to thread it in a little bit into the stories I write and give me a chance to talk to everybody about why I like birding or what my character does and some of the really, really neat things about birds and birding and the community in general.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that leads us so beautifully into, a question from one of our audience members. There is all of this talk about chicken or egg, right? So I'm curious, with your books, what comes first, the mystery or the bird?
Great question, whoever came up with that one. I do a lot of author visits and, events with writers who are not mystery writers. And they sometimes say that, they develop characters and kind of let them go through the plot and tell the author where things are going to go and kind of inform the plot. I don't know how that's possible in a mystery, and it certainly wouldn't be possible for me. So I have to know with a mystery before I start who done it and why they done it and how they done it. And then I would work backwards from that. So the mystery certainly comes first, but I do always have kind of a charismatic bird in mind that I'd like to feature in this particular mystery. They're kind of set around the world, the mysteries, is that they're based in the UK, in a little village in the UK. But there's always an international element to the plot, and therefore I've got a lot of scope to choose birds from all over the place that I'd want to be kind of the feature bird. But the bird has to have some sort of depth to its backstory. Like there are a lot of really, really neat birds, like peacocks, for example, but I don't know that they have enough human connection to be able to mine that for a story that's essentially a mystery. Magpies, on the other hand, are these birds who are kind of in folklore. They're supposed to steal shiny things. They're supposed to be clever and tricky and all the rest of it. So I choose a magpie. That is a bird that I can kind of get some folklore from and some backstory to help my mystery. And another example would be hummingbirds, which everybody loves, whether you like birding or not. So if I choose hummingbirds as kind of the central bird in my story, then that's really going to give me a lot of material to be able to write about, to connect with an audience. So the mystery first for sure, but even when I'm starting to choose the mystery, I have this sort of gallery of potential bird species, and I kind of choose which one would fit in best. Great question. Thank you for that one.
That's really exciting. Has there been a particular bird that you have had the most fun or sort of passion in writing about?
With the hummingbirds, again, I went to Colombia and did the research there. And of course, in North America, we're really limited. Up here in Canada, where I am, there's only one species of hummingbird, the ruby throat, that we see. But in Colombia, there are hundreds, and I got to see like 50 different species of hummingbird when I was down there doing the research. And again, that particular family of birds, the hummingbirds, is one that connects with everybody, like jewelry stores and people who like to shop online, and people who really have never done a day's birding in their life still might have a hummingbird icon or image or artifact in their house somewhere. So it really made a big impact with a lot of people because it was about hummingbirds. But what I love to do is to look at these birds and then take what's kind of the accepted folklore about them, oh, they do this or they do that, and kind of add some different facts that people might not know about different birds, such as magpies, for example, which are known to hold actual vigils for dead birds. Seems crazy, but it's been recorded that magpies that have died on the road, be hit by a car or something, other magpies will come and line up on the fence or the trees around there and even fly down and lay sticks by it at times. It's kind of a crazy thing, but it's something that most people wouldn't know. So when I discovered this fact, I thought, hey, I'm going to kind of stick that in the book there to say, just let people know. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, did you get any like exciting feedback from people about how that made them think about birds differently or shape any of their relationships?
Yeah, mostly the first reaction was, that sounds crazy. But when I went and checked it online, yeah, that's absolutely the truth. I do get quite a bit of feedback from my talks and presentations and the books themselves, with people saying, I just never knew that. It's so interesting to learn that. And, it's like any subject, like this sort of surface knowledge or peripheral knowledge that people pick up about birds, even if they're not birders. But as soon as you start to look into things, you start to get different layers, like your mind down a bit, and you find really, really interesting stuff. And you just present that to people and they go, I've seen that bird 100 times and I just never knew they did that. So that's really, really rewarding. It's a great part of the writing process.
Yeah, I really relate to that rewarding process where it feels like you've sort of been a part of someone's changing relationship with birds.
Yeah,
What is
it's not the kind of goal that's at the forefront of my mind when I sit down to write, but it's always a big part of when I'm actually writing. I think, oh, you know what, I need to enrich this a little bit and put in this bird fact or put in this fact about conservation issues are another huge part of the books, conservation element or issue in each of the books. And so again, looking at that, I can kind of throw in some information, and you don't have to mine down very far to find really, really interesting stuff about conservation efforts that are working, that people go under the radar, people don't know about, or accepted facts about things that are just not accurate and stuff. So that's always a pleasant part of the book that I like to, I like to surprise them with a mystery, but just kind of introduce things they may not know in terms of the birds and the conservation issues.
Has there been anything that felt like very, like maybe recently even, that felt really exciting and you're kind of immediately like, I want to share this with my audience?
Yeah, I mean, with the last book about, it's called A Nye of Pheasants, and I started to think about the human relationship with pheasants, and I thought, how far does this go back? Like how long have humans been kind of observing pheasants? And I found that it goes right back into Chinese art, like 5,000 years ago. There's elements of references. 1,000 years ago, it starts to appear in the artwork. And then we come up to the modern day, and I find that pheasants are becoming an accepted source of protein, a meat source, in the UK a lot as well, particularly as a substitute for beef and other meats. And so all of this stuff was new to me. And I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. Pheasants have kind of spread through human history and civilization for all these thousands of years. And even now, there's a new relationship with humans developing, and they're becoming a food source, not just for the rich, like, on shooting parties and stuff, but you can farm pheasants for their meat now.
If the ringneck pheasant was the pheasant that the people in the UK were starting to get their protein from, or if it was another species.
Yeah, it's the ringneck pheasant, which is just called a pheasant in the UK. Yeah, they're bred for just for meat, and the other pheasants in the world are a lot of them are under real pressure. Habitat loss, and in Asia and Africa are hunted for their meat. So, but the ringnecks there are lots of, and as I said, they're bred particularly for commercial harvesting. but they are, as a family, this is another bird, again, another example of a charismatic family of birds that humans have a connection to. So I can kind of mine all these different storylines. And if you go and start to do some research on pheasants, they are some of the most truly spectacular birds in the world, the family of them. There are, also Edward's pheasant and Lady Amherst pheasant and the golden pheasant, silver pheasant. These are spectacularly beautiful birds. And what I hope from writing the book is that people are going to do a little bit of research into pheasants and go, wow, these are such unbelievable birds, and I didn't know they're in such trouble. So, maybe they'll be encouraged to, help with conservation efforts or do what they can or get involved. So that underlying goal is there with those. But with the ringneck pheasant, it's kind of the one that most people know, and that's the one that's doing okay. There's no issues with it number one.
And when you go back home, because we didn't speak about this earlier, but could you share a little bit about what life is like for you when you go back to England, and if you're seeing any of these pheasants or other birds that you've written about?
Yeah, I was born in the UK, so I have a kind of, and started my birding in the UK, so I kind of have a background in British birds. And the series is set there now, so Dominic, although he's from North America, the lead character, the protagonist, he's now based in the UK, and he's seeing all these birds and identifying them. So there is a kind of a familiar cohort of British birds there. But when I go back, I realize there's a whole range of species that I kind of, occasionally would observe or, hear about or whatever. But I didn't really look at the way I look at North American birds, which is say, go out there and really get them in the bins and watch them for a while. So I'm always trying to pick up new species that I've not in any length in the field when I go to the UK. So that's kind of exciting. And I go out to the East Coast to a place called Cly and Salthouse in Norfolk in the UK. And there are a lot of birders there. And one of the really funny things is because the books are set in a fictional town, but everybody recognizes it as being sort of Cly and out that way. When I'm in the bird hides with the birders, they're saying, "Oh, when you wrote that scene about this guy, you're talking about Charlie, right?" So no, these are fictional characters. We know it's Charlie you were talking about. So they're kind of connecting the people out there with some of the characters and the eccentric behavior in the book, which is kind of fun as well.
My gosh, that must be so exciting to be able to take or use your books as an outlet all the way back to, maybe some of your childhood. Do you feel that happening like in real time when you're writing or?
Yeah, not so much my childhood, but early birding and, days when you're just getting into the, the field. Because none of the characters that surround the main character, that's his girlfriend, the sergeant he works with, his superior, none of these people are actually birders, so they kind of don't understand birding. So it gives me a chance to explain a little bit that, it's not like this crazy obsessive thing. He's a detective and he has a job to do, but when he gets free time, that's how he spends his time, is going out birding. And then his girlfriend brings the non-birding perspective. Like my wife is not a birder. She's a photographer and, loves nature, but she's not particularly a birder. So she, things that my wife will say like, "Oh, why is this bird interesting?" Or "I don't get why you traveled so far just to see this bird when it's so much like this one." So in the book, Lindy, the character's girlfriend, says all the same kind of things, and he gets a chance to explain a little bit about why this is important or explain some neat bird behavior to her because she doesn't know it. So uh, I I get a chance to go back to the days when I was beginning birding and also when I'm explaining, well, I was explaining to non-birders. I get a chance to do that through the books again, which is a lot of fun. So it's kind of connecting with an earlier time for me.
That's really exciting. Have you ever been like while you were writing out one of your books, sort of shocked by your own storytelling? And it could even apply, I guess you mentioned earlier your public speaking, so could relate it there as well if you haven't.
Shocked in you mean by the responses to it?
More in just your own storytelling and your ability to convey what the next steps are for your character or for yourself?
I find the presentations easy. I love to do them, and I've been with a lot of authors because writing is kind of a singular, insular pursuit. You know, you do it on your own and you don't communicate. So I've been out with a lot of authors, and like one on one, they're fabulous. You know, dinner companions and really engaging. But you put them in front of an audience, and that's just not their thing, and they get uneasy. And you know, as soon as they get uneasy, the audience feels bad for them, and they get uneasy. So it's not a lovely situation. But I really am comfortable talking in front of audiences. I used to be a teacher, and I just love doing that. So I communicate really easily. I mean, it's up for others to decide if I do it well or not, but it's not an issue for me at all. But with the writing, I'll sometimes just sit down and write and, you know, just write a passage and then look back and think, I don't even know where that simile, where that metaphor came from. I didn't think, oh, it would be good to connect this with that and use this as a metaphor. So I'm just writing, and then I'll say, you know, he walked into the room and the light fell across the furniture like da 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 da, and I'll just write like in real time and then go back and read it and think, I don't know where that came from, but I guess it works. So yeah, so that aspect sometimes is a little bit surprising.
I mean, that could be really exciting. Are there any species up next that you're sort of excited to feature that you could share with us?
Yeah, the in the next book, it's going to be a really mundane species. Not mundane, that's a wrong word. They're all birds are beautiful, but a really, really well known and common, familiar species in a really unusual setting. So I'm not going to tell you the name of the species because I haven't released the name of the book, and the publishers go crazy if I do. I do that ahead of time. They just lose their minds. So I can't specify what the species is. But in the book after the next one, so we're talking about 2 years down the road, it's going to feature a species, that family of birds that not too many people will be familiar with. Even birders, I think a lot of them will not know. It's an exotic species, and they are absolutely spectacularly beautiful and big and just gorgeous birds. So I'm kind of excited to get to these next two books. But as I say, sadly, what I usually say when I'm giving the talks is, in keeping with the theme, it'll have to remain a mystery.
That is so perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear what species that you do choose. Hopefully it's a species that I see here in New York, which could just be exciting to see it. But
Yeah, I'll give you I will give you that clue. It certainly is. And in fact, how much can I tell you? There is an actual New York connection to this species. I'll leave it at that. I can't say any more. Don't be asking me to know more. But there is an actual New York connection. The storyline is a New York connection to the species I'm going to be featuring. But the birds themselves will be in a completely unexpected setting.
ooh,
Location, I should say.
love that. I love that. Well, I can't wait. Can't wait to read it.
There you go. That's what I'm looking for. That's the reaction any writer wants from a reader is, oh, I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, and I have to say, I know I mentioned on one of our initial phone calls that my mom was reading the book, and she did send me a question to ask you. But
Oh,
I wanted
okay,
to,
is this Mummy Quirky Girl, they call her? Or
yeah, exactly.
Quirky
Mommy
Mom, I
Quaker
guess.
girl. Yeah,
Quirky Mom, okay.
exactly. She was looking for a way to connect with me, and she knew that I had this love, love, love for birds. So reading your books are what is one way that she is able to do that with me in a way that works for her because she loves mystery. This is right up her alley. So I wanted to thank you too for being a part of that.
Oh, that's so nice. When I hear things like that, it's so unexpected, and it really does make me feel good. I mean, you hope when you write that somebody's going to like the book and they're going to share it with other people. But for it to make a connection with, with a daughter, with a child through a family, is just a really, really lovely thing to hear. And I'm so glad that turned out to be the case. Absolutely no thanks necessary. That's its own reward. It really is.
Well, I'm appreciative. It's definitely helped her feel like she has something that like pulls us a little bit closer, allows her to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. And in
That's lovely.
fact, yeah, after she finished the book, she said she couldn't help herself. She went on Amazon and ordered me a shirt that has a bittern on it.
Great, great. See, so
Yeah,
we're doing all sorts of things. We're helping the global economy, and we're doing all this coming out of writing books. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
exactly, exactly. And you, the way that you convey your passion through the books, I mean, it's literally, as a reader, I can literally feel the passion. And I think what's so beautiful too is throughout, and I read the Siege of Bitterns, and I really felt like you were carrying me through it in a way of like showing me different pieces of your passion. So whether it be like it seemed like police work, I might be wrong in that, but and then a love of a story. So that's another passion that I felt throughout. And then birds. Like, did you intend on sort of building this passion castle for your readers, or was it more of a natural?
What a lovely phrase, a passion castle. I love this. That might show up in a future book, Steph. I'm telling you, a passion castle.
I
Yeah,
love that.
they tell you to, to write what you know, and it's kind of restrictive. And some writers really push back against that and say, no, no, you should not get in that comfort zone. But I think it's certainly for new writers, it's really good advice that if you write what you know, you've got this vast house of facts and interesting details to draw upon to help you to weave your story. So I had been an environmental writer for a number of years, so I knew about the conservation issues and kind of had covered a number of them. So I knew there were different approaches and ways to look at things. I'd obviously been a birder for quite a while, and I also love murder mysteries, the ones on TV, PBS and Masterpiece Theatre, and the written ones, Inspector Morse, all the way through to the modern day ones. So I read those. So I figured I knew the structure of one of those types of mysteries, and I'd probably be able to replicate that, and, throw in a few twists and have some fun with the genre. But also, my wife Risa is the world's greatest mystery solver. Like, she's unbelievable when we're watching TV. She's usually got figured out in the first 2 minutes. Oh, it's got to be that guy. And I go, what? So there was
That's
this
so
this
impressive.
there was this element as well that I'm going to write a mystery that she can't figure out. So that was my challenge. So I did, and in fact, all of the books I've written, she never gets to see them. She doesn't read them, the manuscript, at any stage, or I don't run it by her. She's also a writer. She wrote children's books in Asia, so we figured, you do your writing, I'll do mine, and we'll let the editors tell us what it needs, but not each other. So she doesn't get to ever see the book until I get the author copies coming back from the publisher, in that box of books. So I open one up and I give it to her, and then she reads it. And so far, I've been able to get her every time for her to say, I didn't get that one. Oh, I should have seen that, but I didn't get that. So that's really rewarding too.
That is so exciting. That makes it so much fun in your writing too, because then you're like constantly asking yourself, like, how can I? Is that something that happens for you?
Yeah, oh yeah. So as I said, I need to know who done it, like who actually did it and how they did it and why and when, etc. And then it's a matter of putting in false leads, and because I think it's not just, it is kind of fun, and it's kind of a contest between the reader and the writer. Can I give reasonable clues? And what I want is like Reese's reaction. You get to the end of the book and they go, dang it, I should have seen that. It's there, but I missed it. That's what I want, like a fair contest, not like some evil twin or some maniac living in the attic that you're never going to figure out. Like, I think it's going to be fair. But as I'm going through, knowing who really did it, then I want to put in a series of kind of false clues and leads that maybe, because I really think that in real life, the police must go through this. Like, it's not like, okay, well, there's one guy in the house and there's a murder. Gee, I wonder who did it. I think in real life, they're going to come across murders and go, okay, let's look at this whole range of people, a whole range of motives. We think it's this guy, he wasn't there, he has no alibi, da 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 da. And then it turns out not to be the case. Like he has another reason for lying to the police. So I think there's going to be a lot of false starts, a lot of false leads in a real police investigation. So that's what I kind of try and replicate in the books as well. That, the lead character, Dominic, is this brilliant detective, of course, gets all the clues nobody else gets, of course, but still he's following the wrong trail. He thinks he's on the right lead, and he's kind of figuring things out. And it's got to be this guy, surely. And then, no, it's not. So while I'm leading him in the wrong direction, I'm leading the readers in the wrong direction and giving these little clues. And they go, like, again, I'm judging by recent, this has to be significant. He must have put it in there for a reason. And the reason is to mislead people. It's just a lot of fun to write these things. It just is.
Like the way you described it made me think a little bit of like a roller coaster. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
roller coaster rides. Would you say it's kind of like that? You're figuring out sort of the loops and turns of which makes sense for the storyline.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy that, you want people, everybody likes to think, yeah, I can probably get this. I can probably work this out. So they sit there and they start to analyze things as they go, and they go, well, okay, it's probably this guy for this reason. And it seems to be going along that way. And then all of a sudden, like a roller coaster, the bottom drops out of it. Oh, wait, he wasn't even in the country when this happened. What? Why don't we know this? And so then you're back sort of down the bottom. Okay, we have no clues. We have no idea who it is. Then we get another witness come forward, and all of a sudden we got this other clue. So we start climbing that roller coaster loop again. And surely we're getting to the answer this time. And then we swing off to the right, or we swing. He is guilty of a crime, but it's not this crime. And then, so yeah, the roller coaster analogy really, really works. And then, at the end, you hope, just like a roller coaster, you come down with a bit of an exciting scene and an exciting reveal at the end, and leave everybody a bit breathless when they get to the end. So that's kind of the goal of these things, and when it works out, that's 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 kind of the payoff as the writer, that you got to the end and you give them the answer, and people are a little bit breathless and a little bit excited and thinking, as long as they get to the end of the book and think, you know what, that was worth the time I spent reading it. Not like, oh man, there's a few hours of my life I'm not going to get back.
Well, I have to say, from what I've heard from the people who did send in questions, that is most certainly plus, that on their mind and more, and they're ready for more. So that's really exciting.
That is great.
My mom did send in a question. She asked, and I mentioned earlier, she just finished reading A Siege of Bitterns, but she asked, without giving away the plot of your next few books,
Yeah.
what would you say is next for DCI Jejeune?
Okay, well, now that we're at the start, you're going to see the progression of the relationships, and obviously that they're going to be drawn out over the series and this and that series of challenges for them. But as we get to book 7, things start to change amongst the group members. The dynamics of the group start to change, and the makeup of the group is not quite the same. The relationship between them is not quite the same. They're all still characters in the books, and they all have major roles to play, but they're not fixed in the same roles that they were in the first few books. So as we go on with the later books, those relationships are going to continue to evolve, and there still will be all of the major characters because people seem to like them. And one of the interesting things, I'll get back to my point in a minute, one of the interesting things is that the feedback I get suggests that different characters are people's favorites. Like some like the main character, some like his Sergeant Danny, some really like Lindy, the girl, his girlfriend, some like an old birder character called Quentin Senior. So there's a whole probably 5 at least different characters I've heard from readers say, oh, this is my favorite character. So I want to kind of keep all those characters active and in the mix. But as I say, their own roles and their own relationships with other characters is going to change and evolve a little bit. And that's kind of exciting because I'm kind of giving them their own storylines a bit more than I was in the beginning.
And then it also gives the characters an opportunity to grow with the readers a little bit too. And I think that that was something, even after my first conversation with you, I felt so inspired to do more, to think about it was my career, but think about it a little bit differently. And I think that, like, through your work, I'm not sure if you feel your characters are necessarily growing, but it feels like you inspire growth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I really appreciate that comment. I have a really low threshold of boredom myself. Just do. Like, so I couldn't see myself writing the same story with the same people in the same setting, just solving a different murder, in the next book, and then the book after that, they're just solving a different murder. So that's not kind of what I set out to do. I don't want to radically change things when you've got things that people are buying into. They like the characters, they like the setting, they like the birding element. They seem to enjoy the mystery side of things. So the way I structure the mysteries and reveal them, I don't really want to mess with that too much. But I certainly want to give them different challenges and different approaches and bring different skill sets at different times to working out their personal relationships and working out the mystery part, and try to keep the characters and make an effort to keep them as human as possible. So they have problems, they have insecurities, and they wonder about their relationships, and they get frustrated with their partners because they don't see things their way and stuff. And that's part of life. That's how human characters are, and that's how I want my literary characters to be. Like some books I've read where the relationship between the two is this kind of perfect match, and they're always in sync, and they never, never have a crossword. They never argue. They never see things differently. They like the same food. They like the same music, whatever. This is, it's lovely, but it seems to me didn't give you a lot of scope with writing, or it doesn't give you as much scope as if you've got a little bit of, I wouldn't even use the word conflict, but a little bit of individuality. Like, I like this and I want to do things this way, and I like this and I want to do things this way, and let's find some compromise. That seems much more like a genuine human relationship. And if you create that, which I've tried to, then there are lots of opportunities for growth and development, and, coming around to somebody else's perspective and learning how to adapt and accept other people's failings and stuff. I guess it's just a consequence of trying to write things a little bit differently each time, is that you hopefully are going to see some growth in those characters.
I'm excited to hear how that evolves into your next few books too. I'm curious. You mentioned a TV show, so how is that going?
Well, the TV show, I don't know much about the industry. In fact, you could put it on the back of a postage stamp what I know about the industry. But it seems to me that there's huge, long lulls where, it's totally go back to the roller coaster. Like, there's this huge surge of emotion when they say they're interested and they option the series, and then you have meetings, and then you get scripts, and then they start to talk about possible casting and locations and what have you. And then things kind of lull for a long time, and then, somebody else will come on board as some more enthusiasm, and so it goes. But it seems to me to take a very long time of inactivity, from what appears to be inactivity from my point of view, and then, just at the end they say, okay, it's all in place now, we're going to go. So I don't know where the series is at the moment. I know we've got scripts, and they've got to search locations, and they've talked about possible cast members that they kind of had in mind. And I've had a series of meetings with the producers here and in the UK, and everybody seems to say, yeah, it's all good. This is the way the process goes. So I stopped asking. I kept asking every couple of months, hey, how's it going? And I come away from the meetings filled with enthusiasm and completely reassured. And then we go through this long gap where I don't hear anything from anybody, and I go, oh. So I've stopped asking. I figure when they finally have something, when it gets greenlit, they're going to let me know. All I know at the moment is that they're still working on it. It's still under option for them to develop it into a TV series. And I truly feel that I could not have a better group of people working on it. Like, the Canadian producer produces a show called Murdoch Mysteries, which is globally this massive series. The UK producer was involved in the Poirot series, Inspector Lewis series. The writer has written some of the great episodes that I've ever seen of this kind of TV stuff, and Inspector Lewis again, and Inspector Banks, and all sorts of other things, Midsummer Murders. So this is absolutely the best crew you could have working on it. And that makes me just feel good. It's not like I wish I had somebody else working on this. I've got absolutely the best people on it. So I'm just going to wait and see, but it's a fun thing to have on the back burner for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious what story you would be most excited to tell.
I think generally what they do. My wife's again back to Risa. She's a big fan of a series called Longmire, and when they televised it, she'd be watching this and she'd go, "Wait a minute, that's from book 4, and then this other storyline is from like book 6 or something." So I would suspect what they would do in the TV series is, instead of just telling one story, they might take 2 or 3 storylines and blend them together. They'll keep the characters, the setting, the overall theme, and probably have one of the storylines as a payoff for the murder. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if they blend a little bit and even write in original material. It's kind of generally what they do. So might probably be a case of recognizing storylines than recognizing an entire episode. I'd be surprised if they just said, we're going to take the entire Siege of Bitterns or the entire cast of Falcons or whatever and just make that the storyline here. I mean, it's going to take a few days to read a book. So in terms of actual hours invested, maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 hours to read a novel of actual reading time, and you'd have to compress that into a 45-minute show. So that's a big ask. As I say, I think they'd probably go the hybrid route. As I say, I put it to one side. I mean, I'm always thinking about it, but I put it to one side while I do the writing and get on with the rest of my life. And then if and when it eventually materializes, it'll be a whole new chapter in this, which will be lovely.
Well, if they are at the casting process, you've got someone who is interested in an acting role.
Oh, well, thanks for that. Yeah, I play soccer in up here in Canada, and all of my friends on the soccer team have voted to be, the extras in the pub scenes. Sitting there drinking beer. So
Oh my gosh,
so I've
wait,
got
that's
that side covered as
perfect.
well. But I'll certainly keep you in mind, Steph. And I have a very good friend who I'll give a name check to because he's a great guy, Danny Cat, who's a wonderful, wonderful guy and good friend of mine. And he goes around telling everybody that he's going to be Dominic when the TV series comes out. And he has no basis for this, but I don't want to disabuse him of this notion. So if he gets to hear this, he'll have a smile about it.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to tag him in the.
Yeah, do that. He would love that. Yeah.
I will, I will. Well, it has been so great to have you on this podcast episode. I had so many other amazing questions, so hopefully we can spend some more time chatting.
Yeah,
But
I would love that. I really enjoy this, and it's just fun to have people ask the kind of questions I want to answer, which is, sometimes people ask questions like, fairly straightforward ones, but things that are kind of a little bit in depth, like the questions you're asking, give me a chance to kind of explore the answer a bit more. I really enjoy this format. So yeah, I would love to.
yeah, that'd be awesome. And it was so great to speak with you. You are genuinely, I said it earlier, I'll say it again, I'll keep saying it, but you are genuinely so inspiring. And honestly, after our last conversation, I have 4 vision boards, and I went and I added 2 more.
Wow. That's great. I, really appreciate you sharing that, and it's just lovely to hear. It really does make me feel good to know that somebody like yourself, who's so accomplished and managing to do such fantastic things, is finding something in our conversations. That's wonderful.
Thank you. I think that's the great part about meeting bird people that I've found as of late. It feels like people just genuinely gathering to support and uplift one another and to celebrate each other's wins. And that just, I don't know, it feels really supportive.
Yeah, it is a really positive community. I've had some, wonderful, wonderful experiences out birding with people, and I lead tours, and it's really exciting to have new birders come out, and they've got so much enthusiasm. It doesn't matter what you show them or what you find, they're really excited and enthusiastic about it. So it's a really positive community, I find. I really enjoy being part of it.
So, again, thank you so much for joining us. If y'all have any questions for Steve, throw them in the comments, and I'd be happy to send them his way. Steve, would you like to leave us with a few notes on what you have going on over the next few months?
Absolutely. I got lots of things going on over the next few months. I've got I'm down out in BC and Calgary in early May for there's a birding festival out there, wildlife festival. I'm also making an appearance at a bookstore called Owl's Nest in Calgary. I'm down in Pennsylvania in middle of May for the Presqu'île birding festival there. And I'm also at Pelee Island for their Spring Song Festival. I won't actually be part of the festivities there, but I go down as part of a group of us that gather down in Pelee Island and have some fun. And then in July, I'm on a couple of cruises with Adventure Canada, which is a fantastic organization that does these small ship expedition cruises up through Iceland, which is where I'm joining them, Greenland and the Arctic, and through the Northwest Passage. And I've been fortunate enough to be on a couple of those, and I've been invited back this year. I'll be an onboard naturalist, birder, and also talking about some writing aspects and a couple of things on there. And then in September, I have another big long trip, but that leads into research for the new book. So I got to talk to the publishers before I can tell you anything about that. But that's a long trip coming up. So very, very busy season coming up, but and I've got probably, I don't know, 15, 20 presentations locally as well to do. So busy time, but a lot of fun. Wouldn't have it any other way. I'm in a place called Meaford, Ontario. So if anybody's local to that area, which is up by Wasaga Beach in Canada, the longest freshwater beach in the world, I'll just add. If you're around Meaford, that's something I'm kind of excited about doing, talking. And all of this information is going to be on my website, www.steveburrows.org.
And that is on April 29th?
Yeah. Yes.
I cannot wait to hear more updates. And thank you again so much for joining. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to this episode. I am going to be dropping new episodes every single Tuesday, so keep an eye out. And thanks, everyone.